Hey guys, so for my first video, I wanted to talk a little bit about this documentary that I watched. And I'm also gonna be doing some skincare because I don't really feel like doing any makeup right now, but I don't know how to just talk into a camera and not do anything. I'm not there yet, so I need to do something with my hands. I'm using Burst Day Dissolve Cleansing Balm. I like using it because one, I have oily skin and I get clogged a lot, and two, my skin just feels like butter, you know? And yesterday I was wearing makeup and like I know it, even though I washed my face, like there's probably still some work that needs to be done there. So I'm just gonna be rubbing this into my skin. It smells good, it smells like eucalyptus. And just talk about this documentary. So the documentary is called The Hollywood Complex. If you haven't seen it, if you have Amazon Prime, then check it out. And it's centered around child actors. Like the whole thing is about like what it's like to be a child actor, and they follow a bunch of child actors around who are trying to get casted during pilot season. And so basically the documentary highlights these kids living in the Oakwood Apartments, which is an apartment complex in LA that's like right by, like really close to where all the studios are. And plus you can do month-to-month housing there, so you don't have to get a full-time lease, because pilot season goes from January to about April, May. So you don't want to get a full year lease, and you can get a fully furnished apartment there. So there's a lot of reasons why it became ubiquitous with actors. It wasn't necessarily designed to be that way, but it just kind of naturally fell into that. The documentary also kind of focuses on, talks to like, the people who are at the Oakwood, because they don't just have a lot of actors and child actors who live there. They also have like agents who like to come, and people who have workshops and things like that, who come in and kind of offer their services to the people who live there.
Your parents, big time. We don't like a parent, we delete the child off the tape. They just erase them. Whatever you want, just think about it and keep that in your mind and see that all the time. You're gonna get an Academy Award, you're gonna get an Oscar. Here's your little motto today. If you believe it, you can achieve it and receive it. Believe, achieve, receive.
Okay, let's give Stuart a big hand for
So you end up seeing, and the doc ends up talking to the woman who runs the Oakwood, and agents, casting directors, acting coaches, and really gives you the context on how few people actually make it.
Our policy is that everyone who comes has to do a free seminar, because I feel that the families spend enough money doing all the classes and headshots and everything else, that here at Oakwood I want everything free.
It's something that I think was really Rosie's doing.
And speaking of how few people get into the industry, something to note about child actors is that 20,000 plus child actors come to Hollywood each year, and 95% never get a role, never land a single role. Parents' desperations, egos, and the LA delusion. The movie The Hollywood Complex refers to both, the parents' obsessions to make their children famous, and the complex itself that is known to make people famous in Hollywood. And I think it's a very fitting description, especially when you watch this documentary. You see that a lot of these parents are kind of, you can tell none of them really have their head together. They all seem to be very narcissistic to some degree, very kind of like, they have this like hunger and desperation in their eyes. And it's very clear that they want this in some cases more than their children do. In fact, there's a scene where there's a bunch of the kids at the Oakwood and they're talking to casting directors, and the casting directors are asking them, you know, what do you want to be when you get older?
I'm always bright and happy because I just bright and happy because I love happy stuff.
Right. What do you want to grow up and be?
I want to grow up to be a surgeon, a zookeeper, something to do with land animals and ocean animals.
Really? So what's the acting for? Just to have fun now?
Yeah, I really wanted to be an actress when I was a kid.
And the way she said it, it sounded so rehearsed. Again, like it didn't sound like her own words. Plus, who as a 6-year-old is like, I knew I wanted to do this since I was born? Most kids don't say that. That's something an adult would say. You know what I mean? So let's start with the obvious. It's not cheap to live there. So the Oakwood Apartments is about $4,000 for a 2-bedroom, unfurnished. You add gas, food, you know, just miscellaneous living expenses. You're spending about $6,000 a month just to be there. Once again, pilot season, it goes from January to about May. So that's 4 to 5 months that you literally just have to just sit there and burn money, $6K a month, and then be sitting by your phone waiting for auditions. So that's the other part of it. It's having consistent employment, I think, is really hard because you're always being called in for casting calls. And you see that reflected in the documentary as well. There's one mother who has the kids all collect bottles with her.
I've seen everything from families who have so much money that they really think they can buy it to people almost living in their car. We got a bag for glass bottles, we got a bag for cans, and a bag for plastic bottles. We're gonna take you on a treasure hunt. Come on, Patrick. Don't let it fall on my head like you did earlier. Ooh, Patrick. Jackpot.
Yeah.
Your bottle.
Saving the environment is good, but we're just in it for the cash.
We have our standards.
They're not very high, but we have them.
Do what you have to do.
So that way they can like recyclables from other people's neighborhoods and stuff. So that way they can make enough money to like feed themselves. And she only feeds them like hot dogs and Kraft mac and cheese, which is like, holy shit, the amount of preservatives. Those kids are going to be so salt addicted by the time they hit 18. It doesn't even make any sense.
Well, my husband's a pilot in the Air Force. And because he's a pilot in the Air Force, we're definitely not rich. Eat a lot of hot dogs, macaroni and cheese when we're here.
In mom's room, we have this table, and it has like snacks and stuff. We call it the snack table. It has like food where we can get snacks. And I sleep under the snack table because there's nowhere else for me to sleep. I like all the princesses. God, please help Dad fly the Predator and defeat the bad terrorists. Thank you for this dinner and help those in need. Amen.
Amen. Very good, Ryan.
And for what, you know? The documentary came out in 2009. And so that being said, it is really interesting that I've seen it now because I can, you know, look at everyone's IMDb accounts and see what became of everyone. Spoiler alert, nobody made it. And it's not like there wasn't anybody who wasn't, you know, had any potential talent. It just seems as though, once again, the odds are just not in your favor. Going back to what I was saying about the financial hardships that a lot of these families take under, another family that we see, and she's kind of like one of the bigger, or one of the families that we see the most in the documentary. And basically, her and her mother are from Missouri, and her dad is at home. Basically living by himself and just making money to pay for the mortgage back home, and so that way they can also, you know, continue to live in LA and continue to stay out there. that family stayed in LA for 3 years. Like, she literally lived out in LA for 3 years, only seeing her dad like once a year in that process. And are you ready for it? They spent $180,000 in those 3 years. Yeah, on acting classes, feeding themselves, rent, you know, headshots, all of that shit. And not a single role. I can't even imagine. I like, I know that, you know, you hear these stories of actors and they had to kind of overcome a lot, right? Like, they were living in their cars, like Halle Berry, they were stripping, like, you know, Channing Tatum, before they made it. But I love the documentary because it shows you exactly what the other side looks like. For every, you know, Halle Berry or Channing Tatum that makes it, there are, I'm gonna guess, at least 50 who didn't. And I'm not saying that like talent, it doesn't play a big part of it. Some of those people are less talented, but I think also there are a lot of other there are certain circumstances that are kind of outside of people's control that also kind of contribute to this, right? If you are trying to be an actor and, you know, maybe you have like a crooked tooth, or maybe your speech mannerisms have a slight dialect or accent to it, like, those are things that are going to limit your ability to get roles and won't be able to change unless you have more money. And that is a big part of how a lot of these kids in this documentary end up getting sucked into being stuck there. There was a quote that someone said in the movie that like really stuck with me. And it was, LA is one of the few places where you can die of encouragement. And when you're seeing these poor kids getting, you know, flit about from audition to audition, and they're not being told by casting agents like what they're doing wrong or what they could do differently. So they're just left to wonder, like, why didn't I get this role? And at the same time, the casting director tells them that they're doing great, and all these agents are telling them that they're doing great and that they have all this talent, all this potential. So they feel like they can't leave, you know, like they feel like, you know, if I leave now, like I could be like one audition away from the role of my dreams. And clearly people think that I'm good and people think that I'm talented. And I don't think that that's the full picture of the issue in LA. And I don't think that enough people are giving these kids any real understanding of how fucked up this is. I mean, like, just think about it. Kids are by nature not really able to understand things on a big picture scale. And they're damn sure not really good at math or statistics. So if you try to explain to a child that 20,000 kids move to LA each year, that doesn't even count the kids who already live here and are working and are trying to get work, and then you tell them that 95% of those kids never even get a role, they don't really understand what that, they're not going to have the capacity to understand what those statistics really mean, if that makes sense, you know? And I do think that it is the parents' responsibility to be more honest with their child and with themselves about the realisticness of what's going, like what's the likelihood of them actually making it. Because like, just think about it. You pull your kid out of school for 4 to 5 months out of the year, each year, just to maybe get a role. And let's say they do get a role in a pilot, and there's no guarantee that that pilot will even get picked up, and there's no guarantee that that pilot will even be, or that show will even be successful if it gets picked up. There's so many variables, and it's like, are you really willing to gamble away your child's entire childhood for maybe the chance that this shit's gonna work out? Another crazy scene of parents being completely fucking delusional. There's this one actress, like child actress in the movie, and she's got like this thick Russian accent, and her parents are, I believe, Russian as well. And basically, the mom is trying to get their daughter more roles, and she doesn't seem to understand why she's not getting any roles. So this woman decides that she's going to join Scientology. Yeah, she joined Scientology because she thought that was going to actually create job opportunities for her. She thought that she was going to be Tom Cruise.
Most successful people like Tom Cruise and most of the celebrities in Hollywood actually practice dynamics. And yeah, so I decided to try it, and this is the training class which I've taken. I was very proud of it because it takes usually 6 months to finish it, and I finished it in 1 day. They also advised me to take additional training class. This is continuation, is Dynamics Extension course. And I will be doing it online, and this is actually, this is, let's see. This is actually another book, which I'll have to read in the next 2 weeks.
It's incredible the amount of that people can get away with, truly and honestly. Some other contenders for the most delusional parents in the documentary, there's a scene where a 6-year-old girl is gets a call back for a role as a little girl who's dying of cancer.
The character is a very sick little girl who's dying in the hospital. In the next scene, she really is almost dead. And the character is very frail, very thin, pale. You know, so we're trying to downplay color, and we want to make Savannah look as thin as possible. Jake's her best friend, and I mean, she loves him so much. She cries every couple days for Jake. The acting coach said to think about her dogs being eaten by coyotes. She should just keep thinking of Jake, keep looking at the casting director like she's dying. They want
Have
no
you showed
laughter.
her what children look like when they're at like
20
or is that just something you don't want to show her?
Oh, I didn't think about
I didn't even think about that. Did you want to find something on the?
How would I find something like that on the internet? Any ideas?
Go to YouTube and say, I don't know,
dying child or something?
yeah, which would just be
Hospitalized child.
Well, it looks like there's not that many sick kids on this.
what's it called,
Ibrahim made it to 1-year-old, but his ailing heart gave up before he arrived at an Israeli hospital.
Yeah, downright delusional. I'd say that there were so many contenders for the most delusional parents. And I think that that's also, once again, kind of reflective of LA culture, how it does kind of suck people in, and it brings out the most narcissistic qualities of a lot of people. I don't think it's necessarily anything that's in the water, but I do think that the industry itself tends to attract a lot of narcissists because people who constantly need validation and constantly need attention are going to look for ways to get it, and whether that be on social media or, you know, gaining fame as an actor or in the entertainment industry, or doing it through your child, it's a great way to find any of that narcissistic high that you might be looking for.
We're doing the best that we can do on the set, but we also have to do it in public, and we have to live in public, and we have to get attention from people in public, and then one day it's gone, and you don't know what to do anymore. And that's how you end up on a shitty reality show, because you're like, please just somebody pay attention to me, because that's the only way I know how to exist.
So I'll say that a lot of the behavior that I'm seeing in the parents in the documentary doesn't really shock me, but it is like, wow, like it is still appalling in a lot of ways. In fact, like when I was doing my research on the Oakwood apartments, I found that this is not uncommon behavior of women who live in the Oakwood complex. Yeah, the dude from the Hunger Games. He was doing a interview, and they were asking him what it was like being a child actor and living in the Oakwood, and he said that it was horrible. Like, there were these group of moms every year, they would be like the super stage moms. They would harass you if they knew you were going to auditions, follow you around, try to sabotage your auditions, just try to sabotage your child, you know, barge in on your auditions, do all kinds of crazy stuff. He even recalled an incident where he was practicing lines for a role in this conference room at the Oakwood, right? Because they have like a lot of conference room areas. And he's there, he's minding his business, and he's practicing his lines. And one of the stage moms walks in and she's like, "Do you need help with your lines? Can I help you with your lines?" And he's like, "Sure, sure." And so she runs out, grabs her son, comes back with her son, and is basically just like, okay, hold on, pause. I know you're like probably thinking like, why is she massaging her nose with oil so much? My blackheads are so ridiculous, and you'd be surprised how much blackhead gunk is still coming out. I know that's not cute, but that's the reality of it. And if you don't like believe me, oil cleansing is the truth. I'm also gonna link a YouTube video that kind of breaks down the science of it, but it really does help. Because before this, listen, I'd be using all kinds of cleansers, toners, and it just felt like my skin would be dry from using soap and cleansing and stuff, but like I could still feel the prickliness and the bumps of like my nose, blackheads, if that makes sense. So anyway, going back to the story, yeah, so she runs, grabs her son, brings him in, and she's like, okay, so why don't you have my son read the lines with you? So they read the lines together, and then little did he know that this woman was setting her son up to basically memorize all of Josh Hutcherson's lines, and then tails them to their audition and like, you know, kind of like impedes on his audition and tries to get one for her own son. That's the kind of stuff that goes on there. So it's a lot. It's a lot. And I do think that a lot of the narcissistic parents that come out there and want it more for their kids. They don't even really understand how little, a lot of these times you'll see these kids and you can tell that they like the idea of maybe being a child actor. I think a lot of times the parents want it more, and if it's not because of financial reasons, because a lot of these people do have money, a lot of these parents do have money and are not necessarily there because they can't afford to rely on just their own incomes. It's a lot of times because either they feel like they're too old to try themselves, or because they feel like they haven't accomplished a certain thing in their life, a certain accomplishment level in their life. So they're trying to work that out through their kids. Basically, there's like an award for child actors that goes on during pilot season, and a lot of the Oakwood kids end up going, and it's like a big deal. And the honoree for the Lifetime Achievement Award was Corey Feldman. Yeah. So if you don't know who Corey Feldman is, look him up. I don't think I'm really like equipped to tell his story, but he's a child actor who has spoken out a lot about the abuse that he has faced, both sexually, both financially, emotionally, and otherwise, from Hollywood elites.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lifetime Achievement Award winner, Corey Feldman.
I want to say thank you all, and to all of the children out there who are just starting this crazy roller coaster ride. Make sure that you stay strong. Make sure that you believe in your family, and you keep love in your heart, and you keep yourself true to what you believe in, because believing is the most powerful thing in the world. Thank you.
very interesting seeing all the parents in the documentary, like, oh wow, acting like Corey Feldman was some model of child actors to look up to. Like, is that what you want for your kid? A washed up child actor who has so much like deep trauma from all of the shit that happened to him while being in the Hollywood system. Then there's another scene where we see this acting school, right, that like totes itself up as like, you want to come with us because we taught Zac Efron and we taught this and this person, and our most famous alumna was Brittany Murphy, who had just died at the time when that documentary had come out. Like, the documentary had come out like a year after she had died, so they were presumably filming this the year before. Well, I know they were filming it the year before, 2009, because the documentary came out in 2010, not 2009. So if the documentary came out in 2010 and the award show that Corey Feldman was at was in 2009, then we can presume that the acting school was bragging about having Brittany Murphy as an alumna, even though she had just died from a combination of all kinds of stuff that, once again, was caused as a result of trauma from the industry. So it was so fascinating just watching all of these parents just like eyes glazed over, not even recognizing the irony or the duplicitousness or the cognitive dissonance it requires to be like, yeah, I love my kid and I'm doing this for them and I'm protecting them. But then, like, you know, seeing child actors who have a history of being abused as something to look up to for your own child. Like, it would be different if you were like, oh, I want my child to have this person's career, but like, you can't, in this case, you can't ignore the careers that these people have had and the trauma that has been tied to it, because they're directly linked. Oh yeah, and there's a scene where the Russian mom puts like finally goes through like the Scientology thing, like reads this big ass Scientology book, and then her daughter gets casted for a commercial for Scientology, and her mom is like, see, it's finally happening. And like, you can really see the derangedness in these people's eyes. And that's why I'm saying a lot of the times it's really not about money, because they show another scene where the daughter is on set for the Scientology commercial, and her mom is like in there like, wow, like so impressed. And you can tell, like, to them it's really about them living vicariously through their kid and seeing their children as an extension of themselves. So if their kid is like, you know, getting any kind of attention and, you know, being treated like a star, even if it is for a commercial for Scientology, in their eyes, it's like, I'm still being treated like a star. You know, my daughter's being treated like a star. I'm being treated like a star. So now I want to talk a little bit about the scams. There is an alarming amount of people who are willing to scam people in Hollywood who are trying to just get some simple answers. You know, I feel like if you want to enter the entertainment industry, it can be very nebulous. And what I mean by that is that you don't really get a lot of straight answers about how you're supposed to join. There is no real, it's not like becoming a lawyer or going to school for a specific degree and just, you know, you get a career out of it. There are so many weird ways that people can enter the entertainment industry, and there's so many rules that are unspoken. And I think that because of that, a lot of people are willing to spend money that they don't have to try to get those answers. So, like, for instance, a lot of times when you submit for a role or for, you know, a gig or for a casting, you you know, you put your all into it, and then you leave the casting or the audition room, and then you just don't know. Like, you are never, it's very rare that you're going to have a casting agent who's going to tell you, hey, so the reason why we didn't cast you is because we felt like the way you enunciate doesn't sound right, or hey, we didn't cast you because we just didn't think you were tall enough and you look taller in your pictures, or, you know, like, there's always going to be some reason why you're not being cast, but you're never going to know those reasons. And unless you have a good agent, which is so hard to find, because a lot of agents have their own agendas as well, because agents make their money off of you, right? So if they have a big roster, which they tend to do, a lot of agents, whether it be talent, modeling, whatever, tend to have a big roster, and they put a lot of priority and their attention on the people at the top, people that are making them the most money. And now that makes sense because they have to feed their own bottom lines. It doesn't necessarily benefit those who are signed or unsigned and are trying to really get their foot in the door, because you have to do a lot of the groundwork and you don't have the same resources. So there is a lot of scamming that goes on because of that a lot of people take advantage of. So there'll be fake casting directors who will tell you, hey, if you pay me a certain amount of money each month, then I'll put you in my casting database so you can get first dibs on certain roles. And a lot of the times that is bullshit. They are bullshit. You should never be paying to get casting information ever, if you just, in case you didn't know. But anyway, there's a scene, right, where there are two of the child actors, one the girl from Missouri I was talking about, her name is Megan, and this other girl named Shanna. And Shanna's got like big horse girl energy, and it's crazy because at the end it's revealed that she is one. Not revealed, but you see that she like lives on a horse farm or whatever. But anyway, and they are both like really trying hard to get casted. Like they like are kind of like our protagonists kind of the documentary. And you see them trying to get casted to different things, and they're putting their heart into it, and it's just not happening for either one of them. And they finally both get an offer for an agent at the convention, right? So that scene of the convention, those two girls are there, and they meet there's like an agent there who like really likes both of their looks, and it's like, you know, we're gonna do a meeting, and I want to meet you.
I'm happy to meet with anybody who's looking for an agent. I'm here to answer any questions. One of the reasons why I love the Exposure Studio is that they genuinely care and really have great stuff to offer. So it's kind of a mecca. You guys should come check it out. When I see you, Shanna, you look like you were born to do this business, okay? You look like you've got a great look. The shots are really great. I think there's some more stuff that we could add to it, but the ones that you do have are very beautiful. I think what you're missing, some ponytails, maybe some braids with like a schoolgirl outfit and glasses. Have you had any bookings yet?
No bookings yet.
Okay, that will happen. That will happen for sure. I would love to offer you representation.
Yay.
I think we could do so much for you. I think you've got a beautiful future ahead.
Awesome, thank you.
You're so welcome. Welcome aboard.
You're welcome.
Thank you so very much. Really appreciate everything. I'll introduce you guys to somebody who is in our building downstairs who's fabulous. Okay, great. All right, come with me. But I think you've got a great look. I think with the right marketing tools and with an agency that's, really pushing and pitching you, you're going to go very far. You need new headshots bad. What you want is this girl in braids with maybe glasses, maybe a little schoolgirl outfit.
Yeah.
You want this girl to be the, top of the cheerleading triangle. So curlier hair, sassy pink outfit, or maybe even a cheerleading outfit.
So you're interested in
Very
her?
much.
Okay, because I didn't want to go and take pictures and
very
then
much so.
go to another agents, and then they go, no, we wouldn't do. Okay, so
No,
you're
it's
saying
smart,
that
yeah.
you're real interested.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Why don't I take you downstairs? I'd like to introduce you guys to a wonderful photographer in our building. We've got a wonderful acting school too, and they give our clients really good discounts and deals. In no way are you pressured to do anything, you know, and again, we're all separate. This is just a good place to refer you.
Okay, well, that's great.
Well,
Great,
it's
great,
so
great.
nice. Welcome aboard, my dear.
So these are the sets.
Oh, this is
that we
super.
use. And we can even go back to the beach. You want to look like you're in front of a grass hut at Tahiti? Well, we've got it.
Most photographers don't give you that inspiration to guide you and direct you, but most of them go, good luck. You know, I'm not trying to sell them anything, but you should mention our weekend boot camp we have coming up. We actually have the head caster from Wizards of the Way, really amazing. Like, I mean, don't get in front of them if you're not ready to book.
Right, right.
We have all these sets. We have 15 sets out here that Jim uses for backgrounds for his photography and everything. And we also bring our actors out here.
Oh, that's so...
She's going to find these classes are so much different than what she's taking.
Oh, yeah, she'll love it.
I can guarantee
She'll
it.
love it. Well, she's been in, I'll tell you, since she was 8 years old, she was put in an all-adult acting class.
Oh, no.
This would be like a picnic.
Well, I'll tell you, it's going to be challenging. For us, it's all about getting the call back. We want them to get the call back.
I'm going to start crying. Oh, my God. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Dad, seriously, isn't that awesome? I love you. Bye. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm celebrating.
And that's an old song, right? I'm canceling payment on that check.
Yeah.
Which is what I told the guy
That's
today.
actually what she said. She was like, I'm canceling the payment on the check. If you want me to pay for that class, I will.
Yeah.
But I'm canceling the rest of the payment.
I said, because this is just not what we thought it was, and this is not where my daughter is. He goes, well, I guess we can look forward to her booking something really big really soon. And I go, well, I guess we can. I'm thinking, though, all hell's gonna break loose when this agent finds out that
About
we
the
said,
acting
no,
class.
we're not doing this
And
acting
we're
class.
not, we're going to cancel the check.
Okay, now the next step
And plus,
is the photographer.
which,
Who's right in the same building.
no, which is our agent's husband.
Yeah.
If we take photos with the husband, we'll probably be going out a lot. But if we don't take things from her husband, then we probably won't.
That's the whole thing, right?
Because she'll be like,
there.
"What? Do you have a problem with my husband?"
No, she'd be saying that you're. I don't get it. Your pictures just must not be working. I'm not questioning the fact that we're still in the game, but I'm questioning the fact as to whether or not you can really win the game. Even if you've got all the talent, I don't know if you can really win the game. I have literally been standing here throwing up in this sink. That is what this town will do to you.
The exact same advice. Giving Shanna the exact same advice that she gave Megan. Then they cut to Megan about a week later, and she's like, yeah, I did the acting class with, that agency, and it was horrible. It wasn't a very good class. We're canceling the check, and we're not going to pay for studio sessions because we figured out that the agent that we were going to was actually the wife of the photographer downstairs, which is why they were getting this so-called discount. They weren't two different companies. It's one building, and the husband has just turned the garage space into a studio. This is the kind of scamming that I'm talking about that goes on in LA. People calling themselves agents but expect you to shell out all the cash. And that's the other part of it. It's so competitive to get an agent that you are willing to damn near do anything to get one that you kind of throw logic out the window. And I think a lot of people think that once they get an agent, they'll finally be able to take a breath of relief and they'll finally get some direction. And oftentimes that is not the case. You are still going to have to be working your butt off individually to even get anywhere, even if you do have a reputable agency behind you. And then to make matters worse, the agent tells Megan's mom, like, hey, well, if you don't want to get new headshots taken with us, if you want to go to somebody else who's cheaper to get them, then, you know, maybe your photos just won't get picked up by casting agents because they're just not as good. And the subtext being, if you don't get photos with us, I'm not submitting you to as many castings. So like, once again, holding people and scamming them for opportunities and out of opportunities. This is a very common practice. And it doesn't get better when you're older. So I don't think that this is something that just applies to child actors. If you're an actor or an entertainer out there, heed warning. This shit could happen to you too. And yeah, the casting agents definitely needs to catch some of this smoke too, because okay, so the documentary came out in 2010. That means it was filmed in 2009, which is kind of crazy because like that wasn't that long ago. I mean, that was what, like, well, shit, that was 11 years, but it doesn't feel like it was that long ago. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I was just watching Hannah Montana and being in middle school and watching it. You know what I mean? My skin feels so butter soft, y'all. I got damn near all the blackheads out. Now it's just time to get the ones on the bridge of my nose out. They're the hardest ones to get because it's such an awkward area to like exfoliate. But anyway, so let's talk about the casting agents because yeah, they definitely deserve some of this heat. One thing that I will say about the casting agents, once again, this was something that came out 11 years ago, and it's crazy how much things have changed in 11 years. Some of the shit that these casting directors were saying in this documentary, I couldn't believe they felt comfortable, not necessarily saying it, because I know casting directors are still probably racist right now. Let's just keep it a buck. But they would not be willing today to say it. So to say the wild stuff that they were saying nowadays, I think that they know that they would get canceled for something like that, for a lot less. So there's one scene where at the end of every year of the pilot season, at the Oakwood Apartments, a huge casting director or talent agent, her name is Cindy Osbrink, shows up. She's broken talent like Dakota Fanning, Ellie Fanning, Lucas Till, like the love interest in the Hannah Montana movie, and many more. So she's like a huge deal, and she comes out at the end of every pilot season to the Oakwood and kind of talks to people and sees if there's any talent out there.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. The other one, let me explain this to you. This one right here is just kind of like you're going cheese. Yeah. And this one shows you have a personality. Yeah. Okay? Everything's been pretty wafer at this pilot season. We noticed that. But you know what? Come back episodic. That time, that's when they start casting the friends, and that's typically when they go for the ethnic. So, hello, my man.
Yeah. Said that, didn't find anything wrong with that, and didn't feel no type of way about it. I was shocked. Not necessarily entirely because of her racism, but because she felt like she could say that on TV or in front of cameras, big, bright ass cameras and lights, and not even feel like she could even get in trouble for it. That lets you know exactly how bad the representation and the opportunities were for people of color at that time. And once again, that was not that long ago. There's another scene where there's a bunch of casting directors and they have like 10,000 videos that they have to look through. And they have to choose 10 people from that those 10,000 auditions to essentially settle on for an audition, like for a callback. And then one of those people will get the role. So they're like frustrated because, you know, it's a lot of people and they're overwhelmed. And one of the casting directors is like, okay, I need a way to like narrow this down. Like you said, 9 to 11, right? You want a 9 to 11 girl who sings. And they're like, yeah, we need a girl who can sing who's 9 to 11, no boobs, which is like gross and weird to say. But like, he said it. And then there's a scene where they find this one girl's audition and she's singing and she's doing great and she's having a great time. And he's like, wow, she's really talented. But too bad she has boobs. And then this other casting agent comes over and he's like, does she have boobs though? And they spend like several minutes just staring at this little girl's chest, trying to determine whether or not she has breasts and whether or not she is fit for the role because of it.
Exactly where I'm supposed to be now.
No.
Hear your speech now.
No.
Or my email was hit with a few thousand, and I can only see 10 people out of a couple thousand kids, so I'm in my dilemma.
So what age range did you want to give us?
Huh?
What age range?
9 to 12, no titties. That's what it is.
Do we want rapping?
Is it a positive rap or is it a ghetto rap? Russian accent.
No. Thanks for playing. Wait, Randy, help me. Does she have breasts?
Yes.
Okay.
She's got a great voice though.
I know, but she has breasts, right? Hello, I need to do this quickly.
Very small. I would hope.
One down. It's a nightmare.
Which kind of brings me into another big issue that I'm gonna kind of talk a little bit more about when we talk about emotional manipulation and battery that these kids go through. But it's the topic of age and how the psyche is affected by child actors who or kids who decide to be child actors. A lot of the reason why they want when they cast girls and even boys who are between the ages of 9 to 12, and the reason why they want to make sure they're as prepubescent as possible is because with child acting, there's a lot of challenges. You want an actor who is old enough to remember enough lines and enunciate well and evoke the right emotion for each scene, but you don't want them to be so old that they don't look young enough for the part, which is why you always tend to see child actors who are older than the role that they're playing. If they get someone who's actually 6 to play the role of a 6-year-old, yeah, like they'll actually be the right size and everything, but will they be able to say as many lines? Will they be able to be in enough scenes? There's just not as many things you can do. So that is a big part of why that happens, but that does not make it okay to sexualize a child and stare at her body. Sick. Literally sick. There's another scene where there's a casting agent and he's looking at this audition with this little kid, and this little kid performs so horribly, so bad, like could not sing a lick, could not dance a lick, just a hot mess. And you could tell that that the casting agent was like, this is not good. And the audition's over. The parent walks over and they're like, how did my child do? And the casting agent's like, oh, your child has so much talent. I'm gonna be honest with you, like your child has all of this like deep potential that needs to be tapped into, and I think that there's really going to be a good role for them here if you just wait long enough. Why would you say that?
To take your mark there on the X. Have you auditioned before?
Yeah.
Good, so you know what to do, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, let's see.
Good. Can I have that? Okay.
Okay.
Is it the same song for both the song and the singing and the dance?
I'm just gonna do the singing and the dancing at the same time. Is that okay, or?
I would prefer that you not do it that way, and the reason for that is that when you do the song, we're tight on your face, and when you do the dance, it's full body. So I have to reset the camera for that.
On the chorus, can I do dancing and stuff and you like show the full body? Because like I want to do both at the same time. Like
Well, how about we just, you do the same song twice. If you want to sing during your dance, you can.
Okay.
Does that make sense? All right, we'll do it your way.
I was like,
why would you say that? Why are you giving these kids hope that they can make it? Why are you giving their parents hope that they're going to make it and are now spreading more of their resources thin just to stay here for a role that's not going to happen for them? And I'll tell you why they do this. Hollywood, and I've seen this just being in the industry myself, would rather have more options to pick from than they're actually going to use. So if they know that, you know, you're probably only going to get a role every, you know, if the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth chance, okay, here's how it works. Realistically, the industry is like this. They choose people who are the most attractive and the most talented for each role, and they have essentially like watered down or knockoff versions of that person as you go down, which is why you see a lot of actors who look the same, right? So because of that, you might not know it, but you might be the fourth tier of a Jessica Simpson knockoff, and that's why you're not getting any roles yet. But Hollywood wants you to think that you have potential to make it, and that you're gonna be the next star, because if Jessica Simpson number 1, 2, 3 can't make it, they need your ass to come fill in. So remember when I was mentioning aging, and I mentioned how being in the child acting industry means that you are generally being a part of roles that are casting for younger than what you actually are. So what this eventually creates is a problem where a lot of these child actors are rushing, are on this like really tight schedule, you know, like think of it like the biological clock that women are always worried about before, you know, we can't have kids. That is what these children are going through. These kids are rushing to try to get a role, rushing to try to get a part before they are no longer children, before they hit puberty, before they hit 11, 12, 13 years old, because they know after that, it's over for them. No one's gonna want them. And I think that's a pretty fucked up way to live. No child should be living with that much existential dread. There's a scene where one of the kids is like, yeah, I really only have 2 more working years because once I hit 13, those are the awkward years, and nobody really hires kids in those age ranges. And, you know, it's sad watching these kids, you know, talk to each other. There was a scene where a 9-year-old child is talking to a 6-year-old and is like, yeah, they're lucky because there's always going to be more roles for them. You've not even been on this earth a decade, and you're already jealous of people and wishing that you were born several years later. Like, do you not see how destructive that is? Like, this kid's gonna hit 21 and think their world is over.
Audition a week. And
especially at your age group.
Yeah. I mean, if it was Savannah's age group, it'd probably be 3 auditions a week.
I'm going to school, not an audition.
There's a lot less her age out here, and I guess like there's more roles because that's a really hot market right now. And so say if you have a 7-year-old in your commercial, that commercial is probably going to be like in the Super Bowl.
There are so many girls in the business. I mean, there's an abundance of 12-year-old girls. This is every little 12-year-old girl in this country wants to be a singer, dancer, movie star. And there aren't as many parts.
So it's like, it's sad. Like it's really sad. And then I think the other thing that's like really fucked up, and it's a big one, is that kids should not be exposed to that much rejection. Kids by default are not able to self-regulate, right? Which means they can't calm themselves down when they're upset. They can't give themselves self-love or self-confidence when they feel down, which is why small children need to be nurtured and they have to be given affirmations and given attention, because that you have to build the foundation for them so that way eventually they have enough self-confidence and self-worth and self-control to be able to do it for themselves. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I felt like I looked at every adult as like right. You know what I mean? Because they're an adult, so they just know better than me. So naturally, I want their approval because I'm a child, and I think that like every adult is supposed to do right by me. So because of that, I can't imagine what it must be like to be a child and have to do all these auditions, and then you don't get the part, but these people were smiling in your face and telling that they loved you and all this stuff. And now you can't help but wonder, why not me? And kids can't understand things from a logical or objective standpoint, and they don't understand why certain things happen. You can't explain to a kid, hey, the reason why you didn't get this role is because you have brown hair, and even though you did really well, they want a kid with blonde hair. The kid's gonna see it as like, oh, it's because I don't have blonde hair. That was a failure on my part. I should go dye my hair blonde right now. Kids don't have the ability to self-regulate. So being exposed to that much rejection is not good. I can't imagine. And when you couple that with parents who seemingly only care about them becoming famous, I'm sure that the amount of support and love and affection that they're being given is likely dependent on whether or not they are doing well in their careers or not. And you can see the difference. You can see the difference between the parents who actually loved their child, in the sense that they don't view child acting as something that's like integral to the family or their needs or anything else, and the ones who do. The ones who are more dysfunctional and who have their own dysfunctional problems prior to coming to Hollywood are the ones who are more likely to end up having children who end up down the toddler to train wreck path that Alison Stoner so wisely calls it. And it's studied and shown that when children are not given enough affection, enough attention, and enough love, that they have a litany of issues, like, for instance, poor impulse control, social withdrawal, problems with coping and regulating emotions, low self-esteem, pathological behaviors such as tics, tantrums, stealing, and self-punishment. Now, doesn't that sound a lot like some of the child stars that we've seen growing up who have gone kind of crazy? I mean, poor self-regulation, problems, tantrums, poor impulse control. That sounds like Naomi Campbell. That sounds like Justin Bieber.
He also wrote about being born to young parents who separated when they were 18 and had no money. JB says all the success meant he had people doing everything for him, so he never learned the fundamentals of responsibility. Quote, I was 18 with no skills in the real world, with millions of dollars and access to whatever I wanted.
Social withdrawal and poor impulse control, that sounds like Macaulay Culkin. That sounds like the Olsen twins. That sounds like Lindsay Lohan. And then when you talk about, people in theft, which there's a strong link between kids who are neglected and theft, which is why you oftentimes see a lot of kids who are going through divorce go through a period of theft because they're not getting enough attention, because they feel like there's I don't really know the logic behind it. I'll be completely behind it. But that's the thing that happened. So they're not stealing because they need it or because they don't have it. It's because of the rush of emotions that they're getting from it. So you look at that, you look at examples of other child stars who contributed to thieving and stuff like that. Winona Ryder.
Actress Winona Ryder recently chatted about that awkward moment 15 years ago when she was arrested for shoplifting in a Beverly Hills department store. Ryder revealed that she was in a bit of a dark place during that time, saying, "Psychologically, I must have been at a place where I just wanted to stop." The Stranger Things star added, "I won't get into what happened, but it wasn't what people think."
Lindsay Lohan.
Strangely, you know, being in my addiction and everything and having all the chaos around me that I was so comfortable with, I somewhere inside knew and kind of wanted to go to jail.
You
in a
subconsciously,
weird,
yeah, I
right.
hear that, I hear that.
And I think that was subconsciously being put out there.
These were two examples of child stars who had all the money in the world, could have bought the jewelry that they stole, but didn't because they just don't have the impulse controls that other people have because they weren't being given that structure. Giving your kids accountability is a part of love. And when you are in a relationship with your child where they are the breadwinner and you rely on them for money or you rely on them for an ego stroke by them doing a movie that you want or by them continuing a career that you want, it creates a situation where now there is a power imbalance where there should be the parent who should be telling the child what's best in their best interest and guiding them. Now that parent is becoming a yes man to that child so that way they can continue to benefit from the child's success. So just imagine, like, if all of these child stars I mentioned have been affected by the child star system and have all these issues that I mentioned, poor impulse controls, tantrums, stealing, self-punishment, low self-esteem, pathological behavior, what do you think is happening to the kids who don't make it? It's not much better. I feel like kids are just not meant to handle that much rejection and they will internalize it. And if a parent doesn't intervene frequently and frequently tell them, hey, it's not your fault that you didn't get this part, each time that kid is going to internalize it and that is going to set the foundation for their self-esteem and they're going to have to work really hard as an adult to undo it. And that to me is really fucked up. I'm going to wash this off and I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. Now I'm putting on a toner. It's from Laneige. And finally, my theory on why child stars end up the way they do. I think it's important to note, I put retinol on just now. If you were wondering what that was, it was the Inky List retinol. Now I'm putting on vitamin C to kick in and make sure that retinol is really doing its thing. So one thing that I realized is that a lot of the child actors that I've studied that like went off the deep end are ones who had pretty dysfunctional parent structures prior to it. Like that seems kind of obvious, right? Like why don't people ever acknowledge that part? People think that it's just like some Hollywood machine conspiracy that like makes these kids, you know, turn into like sleeper agents and then they activate at 16 and turn into like crazy people. No, because I'm gonna give you the rundown of what I think is going on here. So I'm gonna give you some examples of what I think happens. I'm gonna use comparisons between, and not to compare people because I feel like one is better than the other, but to compare what happens with one thing and the other. So let's use the examples of child actors who came out okay. Like for instance, someone like Zendaya or someone like, I don't know, let's stick to Zendaya for now. Now I'm going in with my hyaluronic acid. So, yeah, but like I said, and then for the child actors who do make it, you do face a long road ahead because now you have to balance school, having a real childhood, and having a successful career because you can't get cold, right? Being an actor means, especially if you're trying to get into movies, you are only going to get as good of parts, as good of an agent, as good of screen time, as good as everything as how well you sell in the box office and how many people still care about you and how relevant you are. So you can't be cold. So you have to constantly be doing press tours, constantly being in these fake relationships, constantly getting involved in publicity stunts, all this stuff just to stay relevant, or you have to constantly be in really, really good work. And that, coupled with trying to be a child and having a childhood, is very, very hard. A lot of child stars found that they didn't really get to have a childhood. They didn't get to play any sports because their parents were worried about them injuring their face or their body and making them, unhireable. Like, these are things that children should not have to worry about. There's a reason why you're supposed to be carefree when you're a child, because you don't get that opportunity again when you're an adult. Like, these kids are living like they're NBA draft picks, you know what I mean? Like, they have, like, the way that they have to live to basically make sure that they are the slabs of meat that they are still good enough for sale. Like, in addition to all of that, you have to manage all of that, and then you have to get ready for the fact that eventually you're not going to be a child anymore, and are people still going to be interested in you when you are no longer a child star anymore? A lot of child stars find that they don't have the same crossover appeal when they start moving away from more childish roles into more serious roles. I remember watching Christy Carlson Romano. She played the older sister Ren on Even Stevens, and she also did the voice of Kim Possible. And she was a pretty big staple of the, like the first wave of Disney Channel stars. And she played the game, she said that she was really playing the game with Disney. You guys should watch her YouTube videos. I will also have that linked in my resources below, because I'm going to link every resource that I have, or every source that I used in this video, because that's just how I'm raised. You want to wait for this to dry down before you start putting on niacinamide. This is good for acne, inflammation, things like that, but I want to wait a little bit. Anyway, so one thing that she felt like nobody told her was that, like, eventually the auditions dry up. Like, you might not get the same over and over and over again castings as a child star when you enter adulthood. And that's something that she struggled with, especially back in the early 2000s, where casting agents were very rigid. If you're a TV actor, that was the only thing you were going to be seen as. You weren't taken seriously in the film world, and you weren't going to get big, meaty film parts that they would reserve for, like an A-list star or even a C or D-list star. Because you just don't have that same audience to them, right? And plus, you don't have social media, so you can't create your own audience. The only audience that you have is based on whatever roles that you've already gotten. So that plays a big part in how you're seen, how casting directors see you, and what kind of roles you get in the future. And a lot of times, child actors, especially ones who are doing things like Disney, are playing a lot of really safe, kind of corny parts if you think about it. And that kind of holds them back when they're trying to get more serious roles later on. Another example, Haley Joel Osment. He was a great actor in the 90s. He was like a really adorable child actor. And he was in things like The Shining. And he was a really, really big major actor at that time. But eventually he grew up. And when he grew up, because he didn't look as quote unquote cute as he did when he was a child, people really relentlessly in magazines and everything else, like, shitted on him for the way he looked. not only shitted on him for the way he looked, but they didn't want to cast him for anything either. So he just kind of became irrelevant and just like this guy that used to be popular. What happens then? What happens to the child actors who do make it and now they're adults and they're not considered cute anymore or attractive anymore, like him or Macaulay Culkin or so many others, and now you're not getting any roles. You've spent your entire life in the spotlight. You've only had the experience of having conditional love, so the only time you felt like people cared about you is when you were doing what they wanted. What happens when you're now suddenly removed from that spotlight? It is an addiction. It isn't like something that you just don't suddenly remove yourself from and then move on and adjust like that. No, it takes time, and a lot of times some people just don't adjust. A lot of times those people end up miserable in the reality TV circuit because they're just desperate for somebody to acknowledge them. You know, so like, once again, like, you don't get picked for parts anymore, so then now what? You know, if you have a family that gives a fuck about you, you go back home and they love you unconditionally and hopefully they've saved some money for you so you can just move on to something else. But if you don't, you're going to be on this hamster wheel of looking for affection and attention because you literally, the only model that you were given as a child of it was through the entertainment industry. That is really fucked. That is how people become porn stars. Not that there's anything wrong with doing porn, but I do think that a lot of times those people are in a position where they wanted to do something else and it just didn't work out for them that way. And that to me is really, really sad. Another issue that I find in a lot of these, in this documentary, in a lot of these cases with child actors and this and that, is that there are a lot of times where parents, casting directors, producers, whatever the case may be, are using emotional battery and emotional manipulation to get children to do what they want. Like, there was a scene where there's like a seminar at the Oakwood in this conference center to teach kids how to cry on command. So you're like, okay, we're going to teach you guys how to cry on command. So their idea for teaching kids how to cry on command, which by the way is really easy. If you don't know how to cry on command, all you really have to do is like keep your eyes open for like a minute or two. Go like this. Ugh, I can't do it right now, but go like this. And your eyes will water. And then you start, do you have any idea what you're doing to me? See? But instead of giving people real practical advice that actually fucking works, this loon decides to tell children between the ages of 6 to 11 that the best way to cry on command is to close your eyes and think of the saddest thing you could possibly think of that's ever happened to you or in your family.
Go into that.
Your tears, everything's in you. You don't have to drag it out of you when you really feel something, right? When you really do get emotional. Who here has gotten called in for an audition where it said that you had to cry or something like that? Okay. You know, most people I know are usually intimidated by it because then you feel like, oh, what if I go in the audition and I don't cry? You know, it feels like, oh, this pressure. So what happens is when we want to cry and we're saying to ourselves, God, cry. Yeah, then nothing's going to come out. We have kids who actually have auditioned for years and can't book anything, and once they get relaxed, they're able to book, okay? So everybody just spread out. Find a place in the room.
And as you're breathing, I want you to picture that you're on a beach, but now you see the face of someone that you love. And literally take your hands out in front of you with your eyes closed and start to sculpt their face with your hands. And while you're doing it, think about the way they make you feel. And then I want you to look them straight in their eyes and say, I love you.
Tell us how you felt. Were you able to concentrate or not concentrate? Tell us what you went through and maybe who you pictured or how you felt. Why don't you start here?
I was thinking of my sister who died at birth, and I was picturing how she would look, because my mom told me that she could feel that she had a really good personality, and that I resembled her so much, and I've always wanted to know what she would look like. And today was finally the chance to where I got to experience it.
It's wonderful. Okay. That's okay. That's great. Thank you, guys. Thanks for doing that exercise with us.
Why are you dragging these kids through emotional pain only to, like, why are you drawing out this emotional pain out of these kids only to leave them to their own devices to deal with it? That would be like a therapist being like, tell me the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to you. And then as soon as you tell them, they're like, all right, great. Thank you for telling me this. I'm booked up for the rest of my life and don't ever call me again. And I'm sure that a lot of these kids are forming a lot of trust issues as an adult because of the entertainment industry and because of a lot of the ways that they are exploited, mistreated, a lot of the ways they're being told, hey, if you want to go home, you want to see your family, we just need you to do this one scene, get it right. That's emotional manipulation. A child should not be put in a situation where they're being told that they will get access to home, shelter, family, whatever, if you just do X, Y, and Z. That should always be an option because they don't need to be working. Children have no business working, which is another reason why I find child acting so crazy, because I didn't really think about this until I watched this documentary, because like, who really thinks about child acting? I mean, you know that it's fucked up to some degree. And I mean, I think most of us, when we think about the fucked up things that go on in child acting, we think about like the sexual abuse, the working long hours. We don't think about the little things that have really big detrimental effects that are way, way more common. And then there's another part in Allison Stoner's video where she talks about her experiences as a child star.
At 6 years old, I enter a sterile white room where a stranger stands apathetically behind a camcorder on a tripod. On cue, I perform the scene. This morning, I'm being kidnapped and raped. Ending in the fetal position under a chair with my body frozen in fear, I stand up, wipe my tears, and thank the stranger for the opportunity. I walk to the car, ruminating over my performance, comparing my screams to the other kids I heard from the waiting room. Now, as with many parents in this unusual situation, my mother is not versed in how to help me regulate my nervous system. I remain catatonic on the first half of the drive until I remember we're on the way to a second audition for a Princess Toy ad. So on the spot, I manually alter my mood, my personality, and outfit so I can win over a new stranger with a camcorder. I need to outperform 900 other candidates, and suddenly I'm smiling girl number 437. My methodically rehearsed helplessness during the first audition will either be associated with rejection, not getting the role, or I'll be rewarded by booking the gig. To clarify, I will be paid to recreate kidnapping and rape repeatedly on set with a crew of more strangers. If I'm especially believable, I may even get an Oscar and the praise of America. Let's contextualize this. Developmentally, my perceptions of basic safety, healthy relational attachment, and awareness of my environment are highly impressionable. Cognitively, I'm just beginning to comprehend the difference between the real and the imaginary. And my nervous system is imprinting patterns that will unconsciously dictate my behavior personally, socially, and professionally for decades to come.
And she said that it took so much out of her to play that part and get into those emotions. And then for the casting agent, she's like, okay, great, get up off the table and just tell her to leave. For a child to jump between those kinds of emotions, They can't do it with the same kind of ease that an adult could. And most adults can't do it that well either, unless you're a sociopath. So putting kids in those kind of situations where they have to make very flippant emotional changes is really hard. Most children can't even identify the difference between a television show and the commercials that are showing between their shows. So how do you think that those emotions bleed into each other when they're asked to do roles and parts and auditions that require them from going to extremely despaired or extremely scared to being a regular kid again? These kids are being held emotionally hostage in a lot of ways, and they're not being taught to decompress, to meditate, or even how to like figure out what they are actually feeling. So like, let's use some examples of child actors who made it and they came out pretty functional to our knowledge, right? Zendaya, Elijah Wood, Justin Timberlake, Elle Fanning, Dakota Fanning, right? These are people who came up in the childhood system and did not really have like serious issues. And then let's talk about some of the ones on the other hand who have had some issues. So let's look at someone like Britney Spears, Orlando Brown from That's a Raven, and Shia LaBeouf. In the situations of Zendaya, Elijah Wood, and I can't remember the third person I just said, they had parental structures where their parents were on their ass the whole time and really stressed the importance of something outside of being an actor, which shows that they care about who their children are as people and being good parents and not just about turning their kid into a star. Last step, water bank moisturizer. And you see that. I remember Elijah Wood was talking about how he knew that there were predators in Hollywood because when he was a kid, Hollywood producers and stuff would ask his mom, like, hey, can Elijah come out to a party with us? You know, like, we'll call him a car and he can come and it'll be a good time. There'll be adults there to take care of him. And his mom was like, no, if I can't be there, then neither can he. Like, what kind of weirdo are you taking my kid out by yourself? Like, go hang out with your own fucking kids. The fuck? And I'm glad she had the sense to say that. Because a lot of parents would be very willing to let that kind of stuff happen for the opportunity to, you know, make it and make their kid make it. So that says a lot about what's going on in the industry. And in addition, it shows the kind of lengths that his parents were willing to go to protect him. And oftentimes when you look at people like him or even Zendaya, whose parents really stressed school and made sure that, like, if she wanted to do this, she had to have the work ethic and want it herself. And Zendaya has shown that she really wanted to be an actor and that she was willing to wake up at 6 a.m. every day just so she could be there because she wanted it that bad. Not because her parents wanted it that bad, but because she wanted it that bad. And because they knew she wanted it that bad, they were willing to guide her as parents, make sure she's still getting a quality education, make sure that she's safe, make sure that she's, you know, mentally sound, while also letting her pursue what she wants to do to the fullest of her capacity. On the other hand, a lot of the patterns that I see in child actors who have really dysfunctional adulthoods are usually the kids who fall into three categories. One, the parents become dependent on the money their child's income for whatever reason. One, this falls into two parts. There are the Lindsay Lohans, right? Because Lindsay Lohan's parents were, her dad was like really wealthy in New York, like some kind of investment, and banking world. I can't really remember. And her mom was like one of the Rockettes or something. So she like had a pretty upper middle class childhood. But when that money came in from her becoming a star, because she got scouted I think Elite scouted her, or Ford Model scouted her when she was like very, very little. And then she went from doing commercials into acting. And so I think it's really fascinating because in that situation, she just happened to become famous and happened to get more success. And because of that, her parents just got the taste of, you know, making even more money and started feeding into that and started really becoming obsessed with it. On the other hand, you have the people like the Orlando Browns, the Justin Biebers, the kind of kids whose parents were literally homeless, usually a single mother, usually living in very unstable situations. And you see how that manifests as adults because their parents, they blew up and now they're the sole breadwinner. Their parents can't really tell them shit anymore because they are the breadwinner, which means they're not being given the accountability that most children are getting. There is a reason why you're supposed to be given certain punishment and certain accountability for what you're doing as a child. Because if you don't get it as a child, you turn into a very self-involved person who's known for throwing tantrums and having outbursts when things just don't go your way. That is the kind of behavior that you see with people who are given a lot of fame and a lot of power, essentially, because fame and wealth gives you power. And when you have that much power as a 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old child, and your parent has always been in poverty and always had financial illiteracy, what do you think that dynamic of that relationship is going to be like? Leads to a lot of hedonism, which is just, you know, living to satisfy short-term like highs, like whether it be gambling, spending money on dumb stuff, just trying to always get a quick serotonin rush. And you aren't being given the tools to learn how to develop self-control, how to develop anticipation for things, which is a very, very healthy skill that you have to develop. That's why, if you've ever noticed, there's always, you know, the cookie jar that kids are not allowed to touch. That's supposed to be something that you teach kids to build a certain sense of anticipation for things. Are you able to wait for something later so that way you can actually enjoy it? Can you have delayed gratification? Those are very necessary things. If you do not have the capacity to have delayed gratification, you are going to be more likely to get what you want and then just be immediately depressed after you have it. Look at the Kardashians. They are a perfect example of people who have very hedonistic lifestyles and very, very little delayed gratification. That's why if you look up the idea of, you know, fasting and why it's lasted for so long, it's because we do need to, at certain points, kind of like remove ourselves from all the things that we have that stimulate us so much so that we can bring our serotonin levels down. So when we do interact with things again that give us, you know, stimuli, we get that same level of stimulation. That's also another resource that you can check down below. So, and then another example with the Orlando Brown situation, I remember there was a video that was talking about how he ended up the way he was. It's a fantastic video by Choice TV. I love his content. I don't always agree with what he's saying, but I respect how honest he is, and I respect how willing he is to say his mind and not be so like kind of captured by you know, sponsorships, especially at his level. So shout out to Choice TV. And he was talking about how in a lot of these situations, like in the situation of Orlando Brown, he grew up homeless. They never had a stable place to live, and he started acting at 6 years old. So that's like this. How is that any different than you being homeless from 6 years old and then started working to support your own family? Do you not think those are the same thing? That causes the same amount of trauma. The only thing that's different is that the child is also getting fame out of it, which even compounds the issue, because now fame kind of affirms that fame puts you in a position that affirms everything that you're doing is correct, even when it's not. And when Orlando Brown started becoming less relevant, especially because Disney didn't want to pick him up anymore because he got caught with some weed or something, he ended up in a position now where he was so used to making money all the time, and he never prepared himself for what would happen afterwards. When you grew up in an environment that didn't have strong financial literacy, you are setting yourself up for a situation where you don't have the capacity or the tools to be prepared when you stop making money. You are spending money like you're always going to make this kind of money. That is the kind of issues that arise out of financial literacy. There was a part in the video where Orlando Brown was literally kicked out of his management's house. He was living with his manager at the time. And the manager was complaining about how Orlando Brown rarely would be seen with an ID or very obvious things that most people would remember to take with them, like their keys or their wallet. That is the behavior of someone who's homeless, someone who has never had a consistent place to live and has never unlearned those skills. Just because you are now being put in a position of fame and wealth does not mean that you are now suddenly going to be gripped with the responsibility of handling it. And a lot of these people never learn. So it ends up putting you in a position where you are really dysfunctional. So yeah, I think that a big part of why these child stars are so messed up is not because of the Hollywood system necessarily itself, but it's about the foundation that they have resting on, like that the foundation that they're resting on. If you don't have a family structure that loves you unconditionally and actually wants to make sure that you're okay and safe and wants to work towards the betterment of your life beyond acting and who you are as a full person, then you're going to end up in a situation where you find yourself obsessed with staying in the industry, obsessed with what everybody else is doing, and just miserable, just trying to keep up with the rat race. And that's what you end up seeing a lot of times. And to me, the saddest part, the truly saddest part of child actors is that these kids aren't normal in the same sense that regular kids are. They've been taken over by their desire to be famous and their ambition to be somebody. Instead of living a normal childhood, they're already sounding and talking like mini adults. And to me, that is the saddest thing. You can age a child into acting like an adult at a very young age, but you can't age backwards. You can only age forward. You can either accelerate your aging process, slow it down, or continue at the rate you're supposed to go at aging, but you can't age backwards. Meaning you'll never be an adult and be able to recapture the experiences of being a child, because that same sense of whimsy, the same sense of wonder isn't there. When you're a child, you're still building your worldview. You still don't know what most things are yet. What's this? Oh, this is a face cream. I don't know what a face cream is. I just heard that word 2 seconds. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, the world is still so big and fresh and new, and that's being robbed of them. And to me, that's truly the saddest part. And yet we wonder why some of these people turn out so messed up. And so many of us are so gleeful to share and talk about these people's lives when they do spiral out of control, because it proves some kind of point. And that's the end of my video. So let me know what you guys think. I'm gonna go ahead and head out. Thank you for getting ready with me. And just so you guys know, I'm using my perfume as well. This is Oriental Tobacco by Dossier. And I'm gonna layer it with this ambery saffron because it kind of smells like, well, it does smell like, it's literally like a dupe of the the Rouge 40 perfume. And this one's like a dupe of the Tom Ford Tobacco Vanille. So I love Dossier because these are really cheap. These are like $29 each. So I have a bunch of these. I have a bunch of perfumes from them because, listen, I like smelling good all the time, and I don't like using cheap body sprays because they don't last, they don't smell good, and they don't make me feel good about myself. I like feeling confident about myself, and perfume is a big part of that. And buying expensive designer perfume is great because it does make you feel good, but you can't wear it as often as you want. You feel guilty wearing it every day. So that's why I started going through Dossier. Because you can get like 3 of the Dossier perfumes, I think, for like $99. And you can get each one for $29. So that's a really good deal. That's kind of why I'm like really into Dossier. And I know that for first-time users, you get 20% off. And I have a discount code because I shop with them a lot. And it'll give you an extra 10%. So that is also going to be in the link below. And they have free returns, 100%. So like, this is not sponsored. This is not me trying to bullshit y'all. I'm trying to put y'all on the game. If you're trying to smell good, you know, that's how I do it. So that was my first video, guys. Thank you.